In recent days, several Israeli officials described that there is a crisis between Israel and Russia due to the Na'ama yששכר issue. Do you agree with that?
Actually, I've never heard the word crisis. I think it's a journalist definition. Of course, there is a case which is now publicly discussed, broadly discussed, especially in Israel, and I wouldn't say that in the long term it will affect our relations. I think any issue could be resolved through legal court procedures and political cooperation.
So you say the media is calling it a crisis. You don't feel like a crisis atmosphere in Israel?
Many people could not stay indifferent to the fate of this lady, but she committed something. According to the Russian court, she committed a crime, and according to our legislation, she was sentenced. The decision was made. But let's see what will be the next step.
Russian interest at this point is that Alexei Bורקוב will come back to Russia.
Yes, exactly. And of course, for several years, we were trying to persuade our Israeli colleagues to make a decision in favor of our citizens. And of course, we will continue defend the interests of Alexei Bורקov and any other Russian citizen abroad.
Are you optimistic that this issue will be solved?
I cannot explain optimism or pessimism. Let's see what will happen. And of course, we are aware of the request sent by President Rivlin to President Putin, and he will decide.
Is the end goal of Russia still to remove Iranian presence from Syria?
There should be no Russian goal to remove somebody else's troops from any part of the world. We promised to talk to Iranians in order to persuade them to move the military groups under their control from the nearest proximity of the Israeli border. What happened at that time, and Iranians showed their cooperation, and they moved. They moved at that time.
But what's right now, at that time, but what's going on right now?
There were no reports that they returned.
Let's talk about the Israeli airstrikes in Syria. Recently, there were reports that the Israeli strikes also were in Iraq. How do you view, at this point, what's going on with the Israeli airstrikes?
As a matter of principle, we never approved such an activities. All these strikes, military strikes on the territories of the sovereign states are inadmissible. You know, one of the main principles in this document is good neighborhood. Good neighborhood. And of course, we explained our position for many occasions to our Israeli colleagues. We never approved such an activity.
How does Russia see the situation in Syria right now?
We are alarmed, seriously alarmed at these developments. All which is going on now with the Turkish border is a direct result of the experiment which was carried out by the Americans. They are playing games, playing so-called Kurdish card, and which was dangerous from the very beginning.
How do you view the Trump decision to, some call it, abandon the Kurds?
Let them to assess who are reliable partners in achieving national interests in this area. Of course, we can use our good relations and contacts with many forces in the region and in Syria in order to facilitate direct negotiations.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time, for giving us the opportunity to do this interview.
Thank you for your interest. It's my pleasure to be with you today and to try to answer your difficult questions.